this is Al. Today we're gonna look at our NAIC championships this weekend. This happened just this weekend, and we're gonna see kind of a recap of the events. And we're gonna also look at the final, which was a Gardevoir mirror again. But we're gonna look at it. It's gonna be super fun. So hope you can join me for this. It's gonna be great. NAIC brought so many different decks. Our most popular deck was actually Raging Bolt, and that's not too much of a surprise, but our top 8 matches did not have a single Raging Bolt in it. Now, Raging Bolt is popular, it's hard-hitting, and in Japan as well as here, it's a very popular deck. I can see why it took up a good slot. But the other decks we were expecting to see, and we did see, was Dragapult EX and Gardevoir EX, our usual contenders for the top heavy hitter, slug decks, spread, and everything. Our up-and-coming most popular picker, the one we were looking out for to be expected to be seen around, was Grimmsnarl EX. I did a video on that before the tournament, and how it was really a highlight, and it did make it onto the graphic, and I would say in terms of a new deck from a new set coming into such a big event, it really did a huge turnout. It might not have been the most popular deck, and we might have only seen one in top 8 in the end, but like, that's really significant, I think, still. And we saw some really awesome players playing it, and we saw some awesome matches. We had Piper Lepine piloting it all the way into top cut, and that was awesome to see. Piper Lepine had a match involving herself, and she normally plays Gardevoir, but this was a good showing on the Grimmsnarl EX deck. We actually had Piper versus the top Gardevoir player, I think a lot would say, which is Henry Chow, of course, and that was a wonderful match to see. I think it was awesome seeing that. My personal favorite matches to see involved, there was one that had Ethan's Typhlosion versus Raging Bolt, which I found really exciting to watch for the Typhlosion guy. I think it was a really good showing on this little, popular deck that I think might not have been everyone's top pick for this tournament, let's say, but it is a top pick in many players' hearts, I would say. You know what I mean? Now, as far as top cut and stuff, we of course saw Dragapult and everything. Dragapult was expected. It's a powerful spread deck that is really good into various decks and matchups. We saw Gardevoir also being very popular. Gardevoir has been a deck that has made numerous top cuts recently, numerous top finishes and final matches, and although some players are very fatigued about Gardevoir, including myself, Gardevoir is definitely a deck that has stuck around for a long amount of time, and it might still threaten to be around with, Jellicent TX is coming in the next set, and then we also have Mega Gardevoir coming for Mega Evolution Pokemon. It's gonna be, oh boy, I'm kind of feeling the Gardy fatigue. But Gardevoir is a high-skill deck, and a lot of top players play it, and when they do play it, it is generally a treat to watch. We actually saw Gardevoir make it into top 8 and all the way to the finals, as I mentioned. But let's go ahead and reel back a little bit before we get there. I also want to talk about another surprise in top 8. Actually, there was 2. If we look at top 8 and stuff, like I said, we kind of expected maybe a Raging Bolt. One did not make it. But we also expected Dragapult and Gardevoir, but the other odd picks are this Zoroark EX deck and this Toadscruel EX deck. These are the oddballs here. Now, Zoroark EX deck, we saw a game involving it, and it was a surprise and a treat, because this deck is not one that I personally would have expected make it to top cut of NAIC. Zoroark EX is a deck, and N's Pokemon is a good deck and stuff, I would say. And it can be powerful, but I think some players, including myself, might sometimes think that the limitation of N's Pokemon and the, your support for this deck is not as strong as some other ones, and so it might not have made it. But it did. We saw it. I was thrilled to see, the underdog decks make it. Everybody loves watching the underdog decks that you don't expect make it deep into a big tournament. And I think the Zoroark deck was that, but even more so, the deck that we saw was actually Toadscruel EX. Now, Ritten has piloted this deck in another tournament recently and has gotten a high placement with it. It was kind of a thing of like, okay, what is this deck? How did it make it this far? It kind of turned heads. And, like I said, it's not a deck that's expected, that is formidable in this meta. It's not like a strong standing thing, but there are players who play it. It's kind of niche, but now maybe not so niche since it has had these top finishes by Ray Chen. But that really shows that, a strong pilot can really pilot some decks if they are in the right environment to a top finishing place. And Ray Chen did so. Going into Top Cut, we saw that Ray Chen was the only one who didn't have to battle it out between the others. We saw that Ray Chen faced off with Tord Reklev in the final match, where apparently Tord had already lost to this Toadscruel EX to Ray Chen earlier in the tournament. So this was a bit of a redemption, and although it looked like it was unfortunate for Ray and stuff, the deck was not functioning on all cylinders towards the end, and ultimately it was Tord who was able to pick that game up and get the win, but it was still phenomenal to see such a treat, such a niche, little weird deck make it so far, and that's awesome to see. So, I mean, big congrats to Ray, big congrats to those who made it into Top Cut, who played through this tournament. I mean, it's really awesome to see all these players, all these decks, and it was a real treat to see everything. But let's go ahead and look at the finals recap, because that is definitely the highlight of the event, I would say. So in top 4, it was battled out. Tord had to face off with a Gardy deck, and it was close. It was so close that in the end of the game for each player, it went down to time because, Gardevoir and I want to say Dragapult too at times, they are setup decks in the sense that they are big stage 2 Pokemon, and so there is a reliance on setup and things. Sometimes time can go and slip away a bit, but what happens when time slips away? What happens when the timer goes off? We go to 3 turns, and then it's whoever is taking the next prize if it's tied. So we saw that Riley was able to pull through at the very end because he was able to do a strategic pass. Now, what do we mean? This was something where he was betting on Tord not having Jamming Tower, not having an out. So, through the match and stuff, we saw that Lily's Clefairy, especially with a Bravery Charm EX, can protect it against a return KO from Dragapult and stuff. And Lily's Clefairy is a phenomenal Pokemon to deal with Dragapult because of its ability making Dragapult weak to Psychic and allowing it to take a big knockout with its Rondo attack and stuff. Now, if it has the Bravery Charm, it's going to need to be protected and out of range from, like, the 200 damage that Dragapult can do, and if there is a Bravery Charm on that Pokemon, you might be trying to gun for a Jamming Tower to turn that off. Now, the strategic pass in play here was betting on a chance that, Tord won't be able to find it, and betting on that this will be alright. And it worked out in the end. It was baffling at first to casters and maybe to viewers, but then the circumstance of it and the big brain playness of it did shine through eventually when Riley was able to pick up that match because of it. On the other side, it was Gardevoir v Gardevoir in top 4 with Isaiah and another, and this match was again a Gardevoir matchup, and some people are feeling that Gardevoir fatigue. Some people might not love seeing mirror matches, but it was a good display on how these two players piloted Gardevoir, and even though they were on the same deck, being Gardevoir, the deck list did vary, and we see that as well in the finals. Isaiah and Riley had different Gardevoir lists and had different approaches. We can go ahead and look into that. Like, Isaiah had a Gardevoir list full of monkeys. Monkey Dory is a top contender and a top villain of, the format, let's say, in the sense that it is everywhere, and it's very powerful. There's a reason. Being able to sling damage, and that's really all it does. It just slings damage back and forth, and the Gardevoir deck really functions on it. Screamtail is another Pokemon that is really great and a huge part of the Gardevoir deck, and as an attacker. Screamtail was actually prized for both players in that first game, meaning that for the mirror match, a vital component and a good tool for it was actually off initially. It didn't stop them from playing a strong game. The Gardevoir matchup can also be, it can take time. It can take time for sure, and it can be relying on setup and stuff, because, once again, a lot of them, like, Gardevoir likes to play from the back and stuff, likes to have a strong setup, and then likes to, maybe play from the back foot, and is fine being a little behind in the beginning. So both players were clearly showing that off, not wanting to be clear aggressors. It was Isaiah going a little more aggro first in the beginning in that first game, ultimately taking game 1 when we saw that Riley was having trouble with another common thing for Gardevoir, post-rotation, an example of it. So, you know, the Gardevoir deck does not have Refinement Curlia any longer, which means a big powerful draw engine for the deck is not there, and so although you can rely on Artisan for finding Pokemon and Professor's Research for drawing cards through your deck and finding resources, sometimes it's not always there, and Riley was having trouble finding a supporter card, having trouble finding those pieces, and was ultimately unable to take game 1. In game 2, we saw a very slow start again. Both players trying to set up, trying to find pieces before making big aggressive attacks. Isaiah was having a moment of not finding a supporter, of not finding the resources needed, but ultimately it was, again, just a match of moving around damage and whatnot. And I think, as I said, it was kind of funny to watch the VGC players waiting, or other players in the chat who were kind of snoozing at the Gardevoir mirror here. I think we do have some real Gardevoir fatigue right now, but it's definitely, like I said, a different play style, especially when it's a mirror and stuff. So eventually things got going and whatnot. It was turning into a bit of a numbers game, as it sometimes does with Gardevoir, and as the mirror match can sometimes feel like, where there's just making sure the right math is available by fixing the math with Monkey Dory, moving damage around, being strategic in damage placement, and being conscious to not give over plays like Counter Catcher to your opponent by not being super aggro and stuff. In the second game, time was winding down, and it was Riley who was able to cinch up that game in the end, going to a game 3, much to the dismay of those waiting for BGC. And game 3 was winding down. The clock was winding down, I have to say, because again, the Gardevoir matchup can sometimes take a bit, and the mirror matchup can sometimes take a bit, and so it was once again coming down to time. I mean, at the very end, it was watching these players try and strategically make themselves set up the best for the time rules to come into play. Riley was really working hard to end on not be turn 0, but in the end, you know, not having access to the timer, I imagine, and stuff, was not able to get that, even though he was very much rushing for it. And that could be a big factor. I mean, that meant that Isaiah was going to get a turn, and then it was going to go back to Riley, and then go back to Isaiah, and hopefully see if you could get that game out, you know? And so it really came down to numbers, and Isaiah is a strong player, very smart player, has been playing Gardevoir for some time, really knows this stuff, and was able to pull out a bit of a math win by mitigating the numbers in a way that he was able to take multiple prizes on a turn and end the game out. It was really awesome to watch, because Isaiah has been working for this for a long time. I'm really happy that he was able to get this win, become NAIC champion here for 2025. It was a real treat, and I would love to hear your thoughts as well on it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this recap was informative and helpful. I enjoyed watching through the weekend. I'd love to hear from you, especially if you also attended or anything of that sort. But yeah, it was a great event, and hopefully this was helpful in going over a recap of it. Man, it will be exciting to see. And now the next big tournament is going to be Worlds in August, and that's going to be exciting. So hopefully you can stay tuned. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. It really helps out a lot, and it does make a difference. If you would like to stay up to date with TCG content in the future and stuff, thank you for watching. I hope to see you next time.